The religious seem convinced that they can rattle pretty much any atheist, and that's really not true. They might catch the unprepared off guard, but for anyone who knows the religious, taking them on tends to be pretty simple. They can't win in a fair fight, and that's why they never engage in fair fights. It's why they cheat, and today we get to see that in action. So today we have a portion of a debate between Muslim Sabur Ahmad and atheist Alex O'Connor, otherwise known as Cosmic Skeptic. And if you wanted to see the utter dishonesty of the religious, here you go. No need to thank me because this is everywhere. Because this is exactly why I refuse to do the dog and pony show with the religious, no matter how often the religious plead. Because it doesn't accomplish anything except exposing the religious as the total douchebags they are. So let's go watch.
Is rape wrong objectively, past, present, future, yes or no?
And the answer, as much as a lot of people won't like it, is no. Because no morals, none, are objectively wrong, period. Morals, by their very nature, are subjective. Now, personally, would I say that rape is wrong? Yes, absolutely I would. But that's not an objective decision on my part. It's a purely subjective one. This is where the religious often entirely miss reality, which I suppose is no surprise. So let's see where else this goes, because I bet it's an emotional gallop to throw the atheist under the bus.
Yes.
You shouldn't hesitate here.
It's an Why not?
Because
I'm sorry. So I should. So the base idea of ethics, right? The base idea of doing ethics is that we reevaluate why we believe certain things and see if they're accurate, right? If there is a proposition that you believe to be totally true, as I thought, for instance, of something like not being a racist, right? If somebody asks me why are you not a racist, and I immediately say, or are you not a racist, and I immediately say, yes, of course I'm not a racist, right? Whereas it pays sometimes, even if it seems ethically obvious, to sit back and think, well, why do I think that? Am I sure about that?
And he's making a good point here, and I felt I had to stop him in the middle of his statement to add my thoughts. Because a lot of times, as I'm sure we all recognize, the religious don't really think about things very hard, or often much at all. Because in reality, everything that the religious believe and think and have faith in, all of those things are prescribed by their religions. They're not thinking on their own at all. They have no answers for why they think as they do. They just do it because they've been told that's what they have to do, and they're not really smart enough to go outside of their little box. And that's just stupid. But I'm going to let our atheist here continue his good work.
And the answer can lead you to other moral places.
Sure, what's the answer?
So the answer is this, right? It is objectively true that to allow people to rape morally would not be an achievement of the goal that we all share.
Except, I don't know that I agree with that, and it all comes down to the objectivity of it. It's not objective at all, even though I can't think of a single case under which I'd say that it was acceptable for anybody to rape anybody else. But what I think is funny about this whole thing, and had I been the one in that seat, I'd be pointing this out, is the fact that the religious are often the ones speaking out in favor of rape. Both Muslims and Christians alike think that it's a-okay under certain circumstances. Women are not allowed to refuse their husbands, and that's rape when the husband insists. Islam in particular insists that women have to cover their bodies because men can't control themselves, and therefore when the woman gets raped, it's all the woman's fault. And for some reason, that never comes up in these discussions, does it? I wonder why.
That's not the question I asked.
That's the objectivity in it.
Yeah, but you're answering a question.
What you want me to do?
Wait 1 second. You're answering a question I didn't ask.
Because the question you asked wasn't honest. I wouldn't answer the question he asked either, because the question he asked wasn't rational. This isn't a simple yes or no question that I could answer, whether he likes it or not. And as is very clear here, this Muslim asshole won't shut his yap long enough for anyone else to give a nuanced answer. Because this isn't about having an intelligent, fair-minded discussion. It's about trying to throw out gotchas to a largely religious audience. And that's always what's going on in these public discussions and debates, which is why I refuse to engage in them. If you want to know what I think, that's great. I'm happy to tell you. But that's rarely ever the case if you notice. It's the theist trying to win brownie points in front of a live studio audience, and that's inherently dishonest. Because religion is inherently dishonest. But anyhow, let's continue.
I asked a very clear question, which everybody I think understood here, right? I asked, is rape wrong? Is that objectively true? And you're just beating around the bush.
Because that's a straw man. Now, I can't say a thing about the position of the atheist, and I won't even try. But I've already said my opinion on it, and our idiot theist here would never accept that for a second, would he? Because the whole thing he's doing here is waiting for a response one way or the other, and no matter what the atheist says, he's going to go after him. It's either, oh, you think rape is fine, or the only way you can think it's objectively true is because my God says so. It's a no-win situation, but because this Sabur Ahmad guy is being dishonest and trying to lead the conversation instead of just engaging in a rational intellectual debate, what do you expect? And that's not at all uncommon, is it? In fact, this kind of crap has been going on for as long as religious debates have existed. If you go back to the 70s and early 80s, which is when I got involved in this crap, there was a guy named Duane Gish. And Duane Gish had a debate tactic in which he would throw a shit ton of indefensible claims and nonsense at the atheist, and then, because of the debate format, the atheist wouldn't have time to respond to all of them. Gish would just ignore everything the atheist said, just throw a whole bunch of crap at him, and then when the guy couldn't respond, he'd go, see, I must have been right because he couldn't respond. And that worked really well for the religious for a while. Up until the atheists learned, hey, we can do that too. And then that whole thing went right out the window. Because the atheists ignored what the religious said and then threw a whole bunch of crap back at them. And they were left just sitting there looking stupid. Because that's a surprise, isn't it?
But the reason why I have to beat around the bush is because I have to clarify that, remember how I said that a base principle can be subjective, but you can have objective derivatives from it?
Right.
So in terms of the objective derivative from our nature, yes, it is objectively wrong. Yes, is the answer to your question.
Based upon the subjective...
But you're going to want to turn around then and say, but it's based upon a subjective principle.
Yes.
Yes, it is, right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that I can say rape is not objectively wrong. I say that if we agree on this subjective moral principle, which we do, then we can make the objective derivative that rape is wrong.
Would a rapist agree to that? Of course they wouldn't.
Okay. I now find that the atheist on the show and I agree entirely, and that's one of the hazards of starting these videos in the middle, because you don't get to see the context of the entire discussion. So yes, if we all agree to a position subjectively, we can indeed draw objective positions from that subjective agreement. But the Muslim is back to being dishonest, if you notice, asking if the rapist would agree to that. Well, who cares what the rapist says? You're not debating the rapist. You're debating the atheist. This guy is just running around beating a straw man. Of course the rapist doesn't agree, because they didn't accept the subjective agreement in the first place. If they did, they wouldn't be a rapist, would they? If you want to go debate a rapist, go debate a rapist. You're just wasting everyone's time here otherwise.
No, they wouldn't. But again, whether or not someone agrees with me is irrelevant to whether it's correct
But
or not.
look, Alex,
this is another jump you keep making.
Alex, what you're doing is you're building a house on a sandcastle, yeah? You are trying to say, look, if you ask me the question, I would say rape is wrong. Yes, it's wrong objectively.
Based on your own religious beliefs. But that's just a claim presented with no evidence. I don't care about that. If I had blind faith that invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies made something true, that doesn't make that thing true. You have to do a lot better than that, and unfortunately this Sabur guy can't. Whereas Alex, he has nothing to prove because for him, it's all subjective. And if you watch his face, you can tell that he's already getting frustrated at this Muslim fast talk going on. Because the Muslim isn't listening. He doesn't care. He's just trying to spin it his way. And that's patently dishonest. But yeah, what else is new?
Yeah. But in your case, what you're doing is you're saying, right, subjectively, some people may hold this opinion. According to that, then since they all subjectively...
all people do hold that opinion. Okay, and from that we objectively derive that rape is wrong.
A rapist doesn't hold that opinion.
No, a rapist does value their pleasure and the avoidance of their suffering.
They value their pleasure, right? So it's not wrong for them.
It's not wrong in their opinion. There is a difference. Because when it comes to societal convention and the law, wrong is not your own personal view. It is the collective view of your particular society. You are wrong, and you are held accountable for being wrong by the collective view of society. And it doesn't necessarily make society right in any objective manner. Keep in mind that once upon a time, society thought racism was just fine. Today, we would disagree. In another 200 years, who knows what society will think? You can't just say, I'm right because I feel that I'm right. But that's all Sabur is doing. I believe my imaginary friend says so. Well, what happens when a bunch of people with their own imaginary friends get together and decide you're wrong? Which one of those two groups are correct? They all have their own claimed objective facts on their side, right? It's just that none of them can prove it. And this is where religious wars come from. Two groups of people with nothing intelligent to say, thinking they're absolutely right and trying to kill the other side. And this shouldn't be very hard for people to understand, but unfortunately, for people like Sabur, he's out of the loop.
Yeah, right, okay.
Because they're maximizing their pleasure.
No, but look, again, this is the mistake we're making. I said, I remember...
No, we're making, you're making because...
This is the man going into town and saying, let's paint the town yellow. This is what the rapist is doing, right? Just because they're saying, it's all subjective. I want this to be yellow. I don't want it to be blue. It's like, you are being inconsistent.
You are assuming...
This doesn't work. You are wrong, right? You are incorrect.
And he's right. Sabur is wrong. Because Sabur is pretending that there is an objective standard, but he can't prove it. He can't prove anything. All he can do is continually repeat it and hope someone takes him seriously. But repetition doesn't make a thing true. Blind faith doesn't make a thing true. Only the truth makes a thing true. And that is what the religious simply can't get through their heads. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what you can demonstrate, and they can't demonstrate a damn thing. And they don't care. Even if it's based on a subjective-based principle, it is objectively wrong,
Alex,
as a derivative to be saying this.
Your entire argument is based upon the assumption that everybody likes the color blue. That's not true. And look,
of course that's not true, but by analogy...
me liking the color, chocolate or vanilla, is as arbitrary for Alex as someone committing rape or not committing rape.
But it's not as necessarily true.
But it's not as necessary.
Yeah, it's not as necessary.
Do you see?
He's really so far out there in the weeds that this conversation is going absolutely nowhere. And Alex, if I'm reading him right, is just frustrated at how absurd this whole thing is. Because our theist here is trying to reach a goal. He doesn't give a damn about the truth. He's not having a conversation. He's just talking over Alex in hopes of winning some brownie points with his audience. And that's why, if you notice, on shows like The Atheist Experience, that the theist gets put on hold a lot. Why? because they can't shut up and listen. Because they don't care. They are not at all concerned with coming to a logical conclusion. It's what happens when you start out with a goal in mind that you just can't let go of. You go right off the rails.
So for him, it's just as subjective, whether you like chocolate vanilla or something else. It's just as subjective when it comes to rape, murder, pillaging, all of these things. And behind all the sophisticated technical jargon and sophistry,
I'll take that as a compliment.
As well you should, because this whole video is put out there as an atheist being rattled by a Muslim, when in fact it's an atheist rolling his eyes at the stupidity of the religious, because these people really are stupid. Sabur won't shut his goddamn yap long enough for Alex to get a word in edgewise. He's not listening. None of them are. And this is exactly why I don't do this. I have been invited repeatedly on religious talk shows and call-in shows and YouTube channels, and I always say no. Why? Because it always winds up like this. Always. And that's why I refuse to engage that way. If you want to talk intelligently and rationally, fine. Let's do it in private. Keep the audiences out of it. There should be no profit motive, only the pursuit of truth, and there will be no double standards. Because had I been Alex, and I haven't seen the whole debate, but had I been him, I would have stood up, declared the whole thing a complete waste of my time, and left. Because this is dumb. And had I been in Alex's shoes, that's exactly what I'd think after this complete clusterfuck. But this is what the religious do, and it's completely dishonest.
Essentially what it boils down to is the same thing which Richard Dawkins admitted to. The idea that rape is wrong is as arbitrary as the fact that we have 5 fingers rather than 6.
It's probably more arbitrary than that. But for the religious, that's just how it is. They don't have to like it. They don't have to approve. They just have to learn to deal with it. And the fact that they can't says a lot about their emotions and their maturity state, and that's not something they should be proud of. Reality doesn't care if you're happy. Your emotional comfort means absolutely nothing. Only children think that way. But that's ultimately what these people are. Immature, irrational, spoiled little children who have to have their own way or they throw pathetic temper tantrums. This entire debate, at least this segment of it, was a joke. I've been in enough of these over the years to know that it's a complete waste of everyone's time. Nothing is ever decided, no minds are ever changed, and it's all done for money and influence. And that's why, if you're doing it, just stop. You're doing absolutely everything completely wrong. If you want to have a debate, fine. Let's do it. No audiences, no profit motives, no double standards, one-on-one, mano-a-mano, no holds barred. If you want to post it on your channel after that, fine. Go for it. I'll do that too. But no editing. We're going to do this honestly. Accept that you did as you did, and so will I. But nobody on the religious side will ever want to do that. They know they can't win that way. They know they'll just get their asses handed to them. Mostly because they will. So it never happens, and every time I suggest it to an errant theist who shows up in the comments, they vanish in a puff of irrational smoke. They can't handle it. They just can't. And that fact alone is utterly pathetic, isn't it?